Hello again. We're back, and we have an amazing fireside chat coming up called How to Build a Meaningful Brand. So I'm going to let Paul take it away and introduce our esteemed speaker, Martin Lindstrom. And this session, we will allow Q&A. So please use the Q&A section to the right to add your questions, and we will start going over them about 25 minutes from now. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Rachel. So let's talk about meaningful brands. And actually, to me, everything begins with the customer. And I have a feeling that it does with you too. I was actually a guest on a podcast 2 weeks ago, and we get to the lightning round, and the person asked me, what's the best business advice you ever got? And I said, talk to customers. And you'd be surprised at how many people don't talk to customers. Maybe you already know this. But if I was channeling my Martin Lindstrom, talking to customers is not enough, right? You go to the extreme of not just living with customers, but even sleeping with them. Could you talk about that?
Well, yeah, that's true. I really enjoy sleeping with customers. It sounds a bit grotesque, right? But yeah, that is in many ways my life. It is to understand the psychology of people. So I literally move into people's homes. I spend time in their homes. I observe them. I really try to get a sense for how they feel and how they live. And why do I do that? Because there is two ways you can learn. You can either learn things through big data, which is an accumulation of a lot of data where you're connecting dots, or you can do it through what I call small data, which I define as seemingly insignificant observations you make in people's lives. And the difference is really profound, where big data, I'll give you a big data conclusion. One of them is the more umbrellas you sell, the more it rains. That is the big data conclusion, no kidding. Small data is all about causation. It's about finding the hypothesis of why people are behaving the way they do. And then out of that, turn that into new products, new services, new brands. And so I'm a small data guy, and everything I do is to investigate the consumers and truly understand them and reconnect organizations with the people paying the salary, which is not the boss, but it's actually the end consumer, right?
Yeah. And I mean, would you call that the ultimate leading indicator? The result of what somebody's doing or the emotion that someone's experiencing in, I don't know, in their home or in that moment versus, the focus tends to be more on the lagging indicators, kind of what you said, how many umbrellas sold and all those things.
Well, I think at the end of the day, if you take the Trump election, both the one 4 years ago and recently, in both cases, we were able to predict the outcome weeks and weeks before it actually happens. And the evidence I have is in both cases, I wrote an article in the Time magazine talking about who would win. Those observations happened by tapping into consumer homes and see what really went on. Now, conventional polling data were not able to say this, but small data were. And let me just give you an example of about what small data is. Small data are defined as seemingly insignificant observations made in people's homes. And quite often they show an out of balance. I'll give you an example. Some years ago, the Lego company was close to filing for bankruptcy. And they've been listening a lot to the big data. And the big data were concluding that the instant gratification generation had arrived and they had no patience whatsoever to play with Lego. So Lego went into a sense of panic, and they created these huge building blocks and skipped all the small bricks so kids could build a castle in a matter of half an hour. Now, Christmas 2004, sales went down 31%, and Lego decided to small data approach. So they literally just went out into homes, and they end up in a home of an 11-year-old German boy. And they asked this kid one single question: what are you most proud of? And this kid, he points to a shelf where there's an old worn down pair of sneakers. And he says, that one. And of course, the Lego team is completely perplexed, asking why. I mean, why didn't they say an Nintendo, PlayStation, or Sony or anything like that? No, an old worn down pair of smelly sneakers. So of course, they ask him why. And he says, because this is the evidence I'm the best skater in town. And you see, when you are a good skater, you slide down the skateboard, and exactly that wear and tear on the side of that sole is really the evidence that he's the #1 skateboarder in that city. And that was really the moment where Lego had this eureka experience, because they realized if a kid is willing to spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours fine-tuning the angle of the sole, why wouldn't the kids be open to spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours playing with Lego? And out of that, the Lego movie was created. And out of that, Lego really was turned around. And today, as you know, Lego is the largest toy brand in the world and 7 times more valuable than the brand #2. And I think that's a very telling story about the difference between big and small data.
Yeah, and you talked about an imbalance there, and I know you've been talking about this for a while, as far as the gap between the balance and the out of balance, or the imbalance, and how there's a space there for brands to fill. Absolutely.
I mean, the out of balance is I'm overweight, so there's Weight Watchers for me. I feel alone, so there's Match.com. I have a midlife crisis, so I buy a Harley Davidson. Right? I feel insecure, so I buy a Rolex watch. These are out of balances, and guess what? We all have out of balances, me included. And that is what shines through as you spend time with people, with consumers. I think the biggest problem right now in companies are that people think that they can read consumers through a report. And you can't, because what's happening is, Paul, as you and I are looking at each other on the screen, we never met in person. But as we look at each other through the screen, there is a sense of empathy disappearing here, right? Because I really don't know how you feel. Like, you look to the right, you look to the left, you are busy right now in your room. So there's not this ultimate connection as you'll have if I spend time with you in person. And I think the biggest risk right now for companies are that we are more or less running consumers and customers through a remote control. We really don't have that sense of empathy. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in the shoes of a consumer's mind and really feel what they're feeling. And as soon as you do that, you will find new opportunities you've never seen before. But right now, we become addicted to running things on a distance, both because we can't spend time with people in person, but also because it's easier and cheaper. And guess what? That basically by default puts it at a distance to the company. But the company between the consumer and the brand is really getting bigger and bigger gap, right? The gap is getting bigger here.
Yeah, and the pandemic definitely doesn't help with that.
No.
But how would you approach that now, given the conditions that we're in? Obviously, you're not going to sleep with your customer right now because that might be super intrusive.
Absolutely, a very good way of doing that is actually to use the power of the camera for the moment. So when we just did a huge study in Saudi Arabia a couple of weeks ago, where we had a team on ground, teaming up with locals and then having them showcase me through the homes, into the fridge, into the bedroom, all these things. We could see that on the camera and ask questions and interact with them. And through that, we got a pretty good sense about what's going on. Is it full on? No, it's not. It's probably 70% of what it should be, but it's probably 60% more than what the conventional data is telling you, because we're looking at the context. And let me give you an example. We have a large pharma client, and they are one of the largest players in the respiratory field. So that is if you have asthma, among others. And one of the things this company did recently was to spend time with the patients. They've never done that before. And it's kind of crazy to think about it. You're developing, respiratory disease products, and you never spend time with the patient. Anyway, we spend time with the patients through cameras, among others. And one of the things I realized was when we spoke to people who have asthma, among others, that they're very shy about it. They actually feel that they're not part of the tribe. They feel they're excluded. They're kind of a little bit different. And one lady told me on the camera, listen, what I do to persuade my friends to understand and feel how I feel is to get hold of a straw and then to blow through that straw and actually breathe through the straw. And I said, what a great idea. So we took that idea and we actually asked the entire senior management for this pharma company to do the same. shut down the light, had the sound of heavy breathing. They're all breathing through the straw. And within 30 seconds, people started to spit out this straw. And we said, why? They said, I can't breathe that way. And we said, listen, that's how your patients feel every day, every minute, actually. That immediately put them into the sense of how a patient feel. And out of that, the entire R&D platform changed because you felt a sense of empathy. I don't think we do that today. I think we're too busy right now thinking about bureaucracy and politics and red tape and all that stuff, where we're more feeding our own monster than actually feeding the monster which we are paid by, which is the consumer and the customer, right?
Yeah. So how would you recommend that people, I don't know, start from empathy? What would be your suggestions or recommendations around that? Because I would say it doesn't come naturally to everyone, right?
No, it doesn't. Well, listen, I think one of the first points you should do is to find out where is the disconnect between you and the consumer and the customer out there. And there may be things in your products and your services which are disconnected from the reality. So here's the way you do it. If you are a big company, find the division which really seems to be the low-hanging fruit of opportunities. Focus on that division for a second. And first of all, have the team brainstorm on what are the key things where we are disconnected from what the patients, the consumer, the customer, whoever that is really present. Then once you have identified that, spend time with those customers through the camera and interview them about these things and find one or two things which you feel that's really the issue. That's a thing we would like to change. Then what you do is to focus on that little thing and improve that in your little division, in your function, just one thing. And put a 90-day intervention on it, a 90-day transition period on it. And the 90-day transition period is super important because once you do that, you actually are able to create the change very quickly. And let me just explain that for a second. Now, Paul, I'm not sure if you can see my screen right now. Can you see a drawing I'm doing on the screen right now?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
We can see it.
Fantastic. Well, I just want to pause here for a second and put what I said to you into perspective. There was an experiment done with chickens that were put into a cage and stuck into the cage for half a year. And one day the gates to the grass and the beautiful sun was opened and the chickens could go out. And guess what happened? They went out and after 30 seconds, they went straight back in again. And I call that for the chicken cage syndrome. And what's really interesting is that what we've learned in this process is that if I, for example, have, let's say, 3 different chicken cages and I open the gates to all of them and I want to get the chickens out, then most people, in order to get the chickens out, which of course is our culture, that's our immune system for change, most people will place the corn in the middle like that. But what we learned is that to create a change in the organization, you actually have to place the corn straight outside the chicken cage. And that's what I call 90 days. Why is that? Because in the good old days when you wanted to make changes, we talked about 2 years ahead, 5 years horizons, all these big things. But guess what? An average employee is only staying in a company for 2.5 years. They couldn't care less about a 2 or 3 year horizon, right? So if you place the corn straight outside the chicken cage, call it 90-day intervention. So in 90 days, you have to make this change. In fact, people are willing to do it. And that's what I recommend you to do. Find small things which you immediately can change, celebrate it within the organization, and then expand it and put another corn on and another corn. And guess what? In the end of the day, you'll end up in the very middle and having done that customer-focused transformation as we're talking about.
Yeah. So that's just a small commitments that are doable, trackable, and people can take action on. They can see it. They can see the results right away. And you said something interesting there too. You said celebrate.
Yeah.
How important is that? Like, why is that so important?
It's 99% of the success, really.
Why is that?
Well, let's go back to the chickens one more time, right? So if I go back to my beloved chickens at this cage, right, and let's say that they are standing like this, and this chicken is now looking out. We have the corn here in the middle, and this chicken is looking out and looking out. Think about how they're going to react. If you see the corn there's a huge different distance to that corn, what is the first thing you're going to do? You're going to look at the other chicken and see what that chicken is doing, right? And if this chicken is not walking out there, you're concluding that doesn't work. That's too far. That's too dangerous for me. And that one will look at that chicken here. And guess what will happen? All of these chickens will basically move back into the cage, right? If I celebrate things within the organization, I create heroes. I really say, wow, that's amazing. That's exactly the way we want to work in the future. It kind of cements the fact that I've walked outside the cage is the right thing I did. And that becomes kind of the new norm for where I'm living. And as I do that more and more, I actually get out of the chicken cage syndrome. And that's really the key issue we have noticed, that if you don't celebrate stuff, it goes back to what I call the default mindset, which is really horrible because right now, when we're going through COVID and we're all more or less stuck inside these walls, why shouldn't we use this moment to change, to fundamentally change who we are? And if we fundamentally change who we are and the way we work, that's a really good start. So we're not going back to work, but we're actually going forward to work, if it makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a lot I want to talk to you about. There's 10 minutes left. Do you still not have a cell phone?
No, I don't have a phone. I skipped my phone 3 years ago.
Yeah, why don't you carry a cell phone?
Listen, I think it's very important to realize that we are not present anymore. And there's three consequences of having a smartphone. The first one is that we don't see things anymore. Think about it. As soon as there's something interesting happening, we take the screen up in front of us, between the surroundings and ourselves. So we see everything through a screen, right? The first step by your newborn baby is through a digital device. You don't see it with your own eyes. The second thing is we don't meet people anymore. I mean, I can't count the number of times I've been sitting with people next to me and you can't even connect with them anymore. They use that device to almost shield themselves from the surroundings. But the third thing is really the worst thing. And Paul, I think you will recognize this a lot, that we don't get bored anymore. And boredom is, in my opinion, the foundation for creativity. It gives you this second to reflect and connect dots in a new way. That's gone with the smartphone. So I realized when I spent time with fellow co-authors like Malcolm Gladwell that he and I and a range of us really started to lose creativity. And that's the reason why I started to skip my phone. And it's been absolutely amazing. Is it easy? No, this is damn hard. But has it paid off? You bet it has. I'm present now, which is a pretty big and important gift to get in life.
Yeah. And one other thing that it affects is your instincts, right? And
it does. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, instinct is an accumulation of experiences you've made through many years. You may not be able to explain, elaborate why you feel the way you do, but you know you feel that way. An instinct is happening when you get a lot of signals. Now think about this. When you go into a meeting room and use a physical meeting room and you feel that was a really bad vibe in that room, the energy was not good. What are you pointing at? It's like it smells different. Is that it? Is the air thicker? No. So what is it? Well, that's you picking up signals which you are consciously not aware of. Remember, 85% of everything you do every day is subconscious. Really, you don't know why it's happening. It's just happening. That's knocking on wood, right? That is when you press extra hard on the remote control when it's flat for batteries. Does it work? Not really, but you subconsciously have that urge to do that. So an instinct is super important because that's the reason why you exist in your job. I'm pretty sure that you're reading a lot of spreadsheets, but I'm also pretty sure the spreadsheets is not doing the job. I'm pretty sure where you thrive is on the other side of that world. So I think we have to come to terms with that as human beings, where we add the most value is through an accumulation of experiences through many years, which can help to fuel our instinct. And you will notice that people who have an enormous amount of experience, they also have a really strong instinct because they've tuned into that channel and made it become bigger and bigger and stronger, right?
yeah. And so for the people who don't want to ditch their cell phones, what would you recommend?
Well, if you go back to what we talked about around 10 minutes ago with the chicken cage system, what would you do, Paul, if you use the chicken cage theory? Because remember, you're sitting in a chicken right now with a smartphone, right? How would you get around that by using the chicken cage theory?
You start small.
That's true.
Maybe you don't sleep with your phone.
Maybe you just have 2 hours for yourself every day, right?
Yeah.
Where you don't spend the phone. Maybe you take that Sunday off where your kids anyway are saying, Dad, you never here, and you actually start to be present. Maybe you expand that to become all nights are off the phone. You start small and then you celebrate that success. The trick for changing a behavior is 3 things. 1 is you set some really concrete goals, right? 2 is that you communicate it to the entire world. I did that. No, I did a bet with Arianna Huffington and we wrote about it. So I kind of had the whole world looking at me. If I would have used a smartphone, believe me, and someone would have seen me, there would have been a photo out there. It never happened. So the world was keeping an eye on me. And 3rd, back to the theory, you're celebrating it. And as you celebrate it, it kind of re-emphasizes that this move was the right one, right?
Yeah. Should we go to Q&A? How are we looking here?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So we have about 5 minutes left and we have quite a few questions from the audience. Martin, thank you so much for these insights. The first question is, do you have a favorite brand? And if so, what do you like about their messaging, their communications, their philosophy, anything like that?
Of course, it's pretty straightforward what my favorite brand is. I'll show you what my favorite brand. Do you want to see it? I'm going to find it somewhere here. I have my favorite brand here. There we are. This is Lego, of course. Small Lego bricks, right? But yeah, this is my favorite brand, Lego. And it's a favorite brand because it's not just a good product, which are helping stimulate creativity. It's also the brand has been very good at understanding the consumer and connecting with the consumers through communities. You have to remember that Lego's marketing budget, is a fraction of what it should be. The main reason why the brand is as big as it is today is 2 reasons why. 1 is because they're using the narrative as a power tool to communicate through the Lego movies and games and all stuff, which really is not Lego, but was helping to fuel the message. And the second thing is the Lego communities, or what they call Lego Maniacs, which really is a huge group of millions and millions of kids around the world, which are sticking to the brand also when they get older. And that's really the secret behind Lego's success today, right?
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Next question is, what's a good way to make sure we use small data for inspirational purposes instead of falling into the mistakes of making sweeping generalizations?
Well, it is actually for you to realize that if you do not feel things, it does not have an impact on what you change. If I told you that 1.5% of the world's population dies of COVID-19, you may say in a rational moment, that's not a lot of people. But if you spend time with those people in their homes, I'm pretty sure your emotional connection will be very, very different, right? So that's the exchange of empathy. It is super, super important that companies realize that they have to install or reinstall a sense of empathy within the organization. Remember, all companies started up with a founder, and the founder was truly, truly passionate around an issue. Let's take an issue. Let's take Snap, right? Snapchat originally, Snap today. How was it founded? Those 2 crazy guys, very young, sitting in the bedroom. One was smoking weeds, right? It's a true story. You're smoking weeds. The other kid, he took a photo of it, or a video rather, and that went live. And the day after, he woke up with the biggest hangover ever. And he said to his friend, I wish we could retract that photo. And that became Snap. So he experienced the pain. He created a solution to it. He will be very passionate about it. He knew exactly how the audience was feeling. As this company was expanding, the founder would really embed that mindset into a lot of people. But as you develop silos and it becomes really, really big, you start to disconnect yourself from the consumer because you didn't feel like that. No, time is moving on. I don't have that relationship with a Heinz tomato ketchup or whatever it is as the founder had back in the days. And that's the reason why you have to reinstall that feeling inside your organization. If you do that, suddenly you start to see aspects which no one else sees, in particular your competitor. And that's where your communication becomes stronger your R&D becomes stronger, and your ability to engage the audience through tribes is going to be stronger, right?
Yeah, it's also a reason why a lot of great companies are started by founders who's scratching their own itch, basically, right?
Yeah,
They have
exactly.
that pain. Yeah.
Exactly.
Nazia asks, what else do you recommend to companies to get employees more excited about company goals, milestones, other than celebration?
Well, I think the most important thing is to understand that a lot of people right now are afraid, and they're afraid of the future. They're afraid of the unknown. Purpose is gone. I mean, I tend to say, Siri, where is the culture button in Microsoft Teams? Because there is no culture button in Microsoft Teams, right? There is no bathroom toilet breaks. Every meeting goes 1 hour, right? And right? There is no common sense happening in that space. And I think what's happening is, as we stuck behind our screens, 3 things are happening. The first thing that's happening is we increasingly have no way of showing to the world that we are worth our job. The only thing we can produce in our own little private factory is a PowerPoint presentation, an Excel spreadsheet, and sitting with back-to-back Zoom calls and ticking as many boxes as we can. Now, I don't need to tell you that's not very productive in the end of the day. I mean, very few people are eating Zoom calls for dinner, right? So I think at the end of the day, what we're talking about here is we need to infuse a sense of purpose back into the workplace. And sense of purpose is to change the entire way you work with staff, thinking about the fact that we need to have a celebration of the heroes sitting behind the screens and giving them a feeling of why the heck am I working this way? Now, this is a huge discussion. I don't need to tell you, but my best advice to you guys is to realize that in the old days, you would have an annual conference for employees where you will celebrate the culture, right? Well, now you probably need to have that at least every month, if not every week. And companies I work with, very big players in the gaming industry, they actually measure the company culture every day. And when it's going below a line, they actually have culture initiatives going in, emphasizing the sense of purpose and why we're here and celebrating heroes in the organization. So what I'm saying is, long story short, is the world has changed. We cannot operate it the way we did in the past. We really had to create whole new models because of COVID, right?
Yeah, so a new model would be just making that mindset shift of the organization, or people exist for the organization versus the organization exists for people.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly, Paul, and you're right. And I want to build on that, because I think the reality here is that if I should put my future hat on as one of my jobs, we in reality will see right now that there will not be big corporations anymore. It will disappear. I'll tell you why. Because it doesn't exist today. First of all, people are not going to go to offices anymore because companies want to save those money. Why don't we just work from home? That means we are in reality millions of freelance people sitting behind screens. Yes, we have a relationship to someone paying our salary, but suddenly you will say to yourself, I'm actually pretty vulnerable here. Why don't I build my own personal brand, right? Why don't I build a profile on LinkedIn and elsewhere so I get other job offers in, and then I'll do a little job here and there. And suddenly we all become freelancers. In fact, suddenly we all become individual brands, and the concept of corporations will disappear unless they create a very strong sense of purpose where I want to be part of that tribe because we stick together and together we're stronger. But a lot of companies don't get that right now. They're more busy cost cutting and making a very lean organization happen, right?
Yeah. And I think that's something you predicted many years ago, right? Well, I would say about 6 years ago, 5 years ago, this trend to individuals becoming brands.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And I just want to say, and I want you guys, don't hate me now, okay? You promised me, all of you, but I'm writing a new book, okay? Here we go. Oh my God, this guy's promoting a book now. But yes, I actually am, because I got so sick and tired of the lack of common sense out there in the real world that I said to myself, okay, I want to build a book around reality. So we actually did something crazy. We started up a ministry of common sense in companies with the sole purpose of rebuilding common sense and getting rid of red tape and bureaucracy and all this stuff. Guess what the title of the book is, right? It's the Minister of Common Sense, which by the way you can pre-order now. But the reality of this book is that I'm so frustrated about stupidities going on behind Zoom. Are you tired of Zoom as well and all that stuff? It just goes on and on and on. Are you tired of that? Tell me.
Don't get Rachel started.
Yeah. Rachel, I can ask you. No, you're a creative person. You love music, obviously, right? You must feel drained by the end of the day. You just feel like, my God, I've been back to back. I haven't had a single creative thought. And then in the end of the day, that's why you have to start to work at 8 p.m. in between dinners and all this stuff. Is that how you feel?
Yeah, I say the best thing that happened during coronavirus is our dog. I mean, we've had a dog for years, but he's taken on a new role in our life, and that he is our break from the day and our reality check. And it's like, oh, right,
Yeah.
there's something happening outside. I can get out of this room. But...
Can I just give you 2 pieces of advice? This is super important. The first thing is, one of the reasons why dog sales has gone up 362% worldwide over the last 6 months is because we are suppressing the sense of touch. Touch is the biggest organ we have. And we know there's a direct correlation between the less we touch, the more depressed we become. So that's not a coincidence you have a dog. But the second thing is, which is even more interesting, we need to have transitions in our lives. In the old days, we'll go to work, we'll put on a hat if we're a man, or a tie, and then we will transition ourselves into a work mood. When we come home, we'll take it off and we'll be in a different mood. Today, I have a pipeline of bureaucracy going straight into my bedroom, right? That's not particular fun. You need to create transitions in your life. Have separate zones where you work and where you don't work, because else you drain yourself, because your brain is not recalibrating. And you all know that when you're recalibrating your computer, it's sort of re-rendering all the data. Well, we don't do that right now, and that's really dangerous, right?
Yeah, there's no boundaries.
No.
I hate to cut this short, but unfortunately we are a bit over time, and I want to be respectful to our other speakers. Martin, Paul, thank you so much. Everyone, please, when is Ministry of Common Sense set to be released?
Well, it's coming out the 19th of January. You can pre-order it now, and you will attend free webinars about this whole thing. But this is the moment. It's only lasting for 2 weeks, and then that's gone, that offer. So hopefully you guys will help me to spread a movement and bring back common sense in this world, right? Please.
All right. Well,
you definitely have something in common with the Humanocracy author. He's going to be speaking later. I don't know if you're.
I spoke to Gary Hamel as well about it.
Yes, and we're going to cut this off so that we can move on to Laura Rueda. She's one of our fantastic product managers, and she's going to talk about building for creators. So thank you both.
Rachel, Paul, good to see you both.
Yes.
Thanks, Martin. Appreciate it.